Ethan and Sophie are in a marriage rut and have been seeking help from a counselor, Ted Danson. Sophie feels that their love isn't what it used to be. Their happiness doesn't feel natural anymore, and she believes they need to recreate it. Ethan, on the other hand, is defensive and insecure, especially because Sophie seems to be falling out of love with him. After a few marriage exercises, it comes out that Ethan made a mistake, possibly cheating, and Sophie hasn't fully forgiven him. She still can't trust him but is willing to try to rebuild their relationship. Ethan, however, is stubborn and doesn't understand why things have changed. Ted, the counselor, realizes that what they need is something new and exciting to reignite their connection. He suggests they visit a beautiful weekend retreat, a place he has recommended to many couples before with great success. Both Ethan and Sophie are open to trying something different. When they arrive at the retreat, the location is breathtaking and they both seem energized as they explore the house and the land around it. Ethan even finds a tablet with pictures of previous couples who found love again after staying there, which excites both of them about the possibility of rekindling their own flame. As evening falls, Sophie steps outside to have a smoke while Ethan does the dishes. While she's out there, she notices a guest house on the other side of the property which hadn't been mentioned before. Curiosity gets the better of her, and she walks over to take a look. Inside, she finds a set of Russian dolls, a running symbol in their relationship. Ethan comes in, finds her, and the energy between them shifts. They have sex, dance, and joke around, feeling the spark they'd been missing. It feels like their retreat is working. Sophie decides to sleep in the guest house, and she runs back to the main house to grab some night clothes. When she walks in, she's surprised to find Ethan already passed out on the couch. At first, she thinks it's some sort of joke, but the more she thinks about it, the more it seems odd that he's there without her noticing. Ethan, however, is confused and doesn't remember being in the guest house or having sex that night. Sophie is taken aback, and both are left feeling unsettled. In frustration, Sophie storms off and heads to bed in the main house while Ethan stays behind in the guest house, smoking a joint and passing out on the couch. Later that night, Sophie sneaks back into the guest house, and they seem to have made amends. The next morning, while Sophie is making breakfast, things start to feel off again. Ethan's confusion continues to grow when he notices Sophie cooking bacon, something she absolutely hates because she doesn't want him eating it. He heads back to the main house only to find Sophie coming out of the bathroom in a completely different outfit. What's more, the guest house is now empty, with no sign of breakfast or bacon. It's as though nothing happened. Sophie insists she's still committed to their marriage, but as they discuss the strange events, the timeline doesn't add up. Feeling confused and uneasy, Ethan tells Sophie to wait outside while he goes back into the guest house. Inside, he finds a version of Sophie acting as if nothing had ever happened. This new version, Sophie 2, is taking a shower, and Ethan is thrown off by the whole situation. He's left wondering if it's some kind of prank or if he's losing his mind. The two Sophies seem to be in sync with their surroundings, unaware of what's happening outside the guest house. They appear to exist only within their own bubble. Sophie 1 reluctantly goes inside to see for herself, and sure enough, Ethan 2, an alternate version of her husband, is calmly doing sit-ups in the living room, as if nothing is strange. The rules start to emerge. No intimacy, no spying, and honesty about what happens inside the guest house. They try their best to test these boundaries and to trust each other. Sophie decides to go in for just 15 minutes, with Ethan agreeing not to spy on her. But of course, the insecurity he feels about Sophie and Ethan too gets the better of him. He peeks through the window and sees Sophie receiving what seems to be an intimate massage from Ethan too. When he's caught, it only deepens the tension between them. Sophie explains that being with Ethan too felt like being with the man she married, the version of him she remembered before things went wrong. This new Ethan, however, seems cooler, more carefree, and even a little bit messier. Sophie tries to reassure Ethan 1 that she doesn't see him as better than him, even though she admits there's a small difference in how she perceives him. Ethan 1, still feeling insecure, doesn't take it well and becomes more upset. Sophie 1, despite her love for Ethan, can't deny that she enjoyed her time with Ethan 2. But the real issue becomes clear. Ethan 1 is jealous that Sophie had sex with a version of him, and now he feels betrayed. Sophie, on the other hand, finds herself drawn to Ethan 2 in a way that confuses her. They go over the timeline again and realize that when they enter the guest house, their alternate selves don't have any knowledge of the outside world. Their actions seem frozen in time until one of the originals enters or leaves the space. This strange reality continues to unravel, and Sophie 1 becomes more captivated by Ethan 2. Meanwhile, Ethan 1 tries to ask Sophie 2 questions to catch her in a lie, but it doesn't work. Sophie 1 feels the pressure of the situation and wonders what all of this means for their relationship. Both Ethan 1 and Sophie 1 start to face the difficult realization that their marriage might never be the same. And the more they explore this alternate reality, the more complicated things become. They find themselves back at the guest house again, testing their boundaries and trying to understand what's going on. Sophie starts to compare the two versions of Ethan, saying that Ethan 2 feels more like the man she married before the love was lost. Ethan 1 understandably feels hurt by this comment and becomes defensive. Sophie insists that it's not about Ethan 2 being better. It's just that she's seeing a different side of him that she wishes she could have seen before. Ethan is growing more and more insecure. He hides his phone in the guest house to spy on Sophie, trying to figure out what's really going on. Sophie, on the other hand, is starting to notice the tension, especially as she plays with the Russian doll set with Ethan. Sophie's look has changed too, her hair now pinned back. Ethan secretly records conversations, but the static on the audio file hints that Team 2, Sophie and Ethan 2, is somehow out of reach. As Ethan becomes more suspicious, he can't find the clothes he packed for the trip. Meanwhile, Ethan 2 starts texting Sophie, clearly not hiding their relationship. Sophie, trying to catch Ethan 2 off guard, asks him why he cheated in the past, and his answer is perfect, further making her believe that he's the one she's meant to be with. Ethan, feeling completely lost, notices some weird voicemails on his phone from friends and family, voicemails that he never actually called to leave. Sophie's growing trust in Ethan 2 makes it clear to Ethan that something is very wrong. She starts to act more and more differently, and it's obvious that she's no longer the same Sophie he married. At his breaking point, Ethan decides to test her. He lies, saying he's going to the store, hoping to catch her sneaking back to the guest house. He rushes in before her, takes off his glasses, and messes up his hair, trying to look like Ethan 2. And of course, they end up having sex. Ethan's heart shatters as he wonders if Sophie has done this with Ethan 2 before. Confused and desperate for answers, he confronts Sophie 2, only for her to tell him that she's not real. She's aware of the fourth wall being broken, but she still claims to be his wife, saying that she knows everything. Ethan storms over to the guest house, convinced that they're being intimate. When he enters, Ethan 2 disappears. Sophie 1, now fully unraveling, declares that she's staying with Ethan 2 and leaving Ethan behind. As they go back to the main house, Team 2, made up of Ethan 2 and Sophie 2, is calmly sitting at the dining table, acting like nothing's wrong. They try to convince Ethan 1 that everything is fine, but it's clear that Ethan 1 feels like less than a person, with Sophie 1 lusting after Ethan 2. The air is thick with tension, and even during dinner, Team 2 acts as if there's no chaos, only a perfect cosmic experience, which they seem to know more about than Ethan 1. The situation grows even more bizarre as Sophie, now deeply conflicted, has a strange conversation with herself. Sophie 2 feels torn. She knows the truth, but still, part of her wants to keep playing along to see what happens. Sophie 2, despite her reservations, tells Sophie 1 that she sees what's going on, but she thinks they should all continue playing the game. Ethan 1 and Ethan 2 then have a tense conversation outside. Ethan 2 denies sabotaging Team 1's relationship, but it's clear he's trying to win Sophie 1 over. With a sinister edge, he manages to convince Ethan 1 to join them for game night. It's awkward, but the night continues, full of unspoken tension. Then comes the shocking moment. Ethan 2 reveals to Sophie 1 that the first time they had sex, it wasn't actually Ethan 2. It was Ethan 1 pretending to be him, having snuck in because he was so suspicious. Sophie 1 is blindsided. She had thought she was intimate with Ethan 2, but it was actually Ethan 1 all along. Ethan 1, now desperate for answers, calls the counselor who sent them to the house, but no one answers. He searches through files on the house's computer and uncovers audio recordings of the counselor working with two people who were mimicking the voices of Ethan and Sophie. The files suggest that they weren't real people at all. They were part of some twisted experiment, genetically engineered or manufactured. Ethan realizes this isn't some cosmic event. It's a setup, a manipulation of his and Sophie's lives. With this new knowledge, Ethan is locked in the guest house, unsure of what's coming next. The following morning, Sophie 2 enters the guest house and tells him the truth. She isn't his real wife. Ethan 2 is supposed to fall in love with Sophie 1, but Sophie 1 was never meant to stay with Ethan 1. Instead, the plan was for her to fall out of love, allowing Team 2 to leave and live real lives. Ethan and Sophie 1 would remain behind, but Sophie 2 still cares about Ethan 2 and wants to help him escape. She doesn't want to see him trapped here, especially with Sophie 1. The two Sophies set a plan in motion. Sophie 2 dresses in Sophie 1's clothes to distract Ethan 2, while Ethan 1 hides upstairs to reveal the truth to Sophie 1. He tries to convince her to stay with him, but Ethan 2 soon realizes their plan, setting off a confrontation between the two Ethans. The fight is evenly matched, and neither seems to gain the upper hand, but it changes the dynamics. Now it's Ethan 1 and the two Sophies versus Ethan 2, whose intentions are still unclear. The chase intensifies, but things take a strange turn when Ethan 2 smacks into an invisible wall, knocking himself out, or possibly killing him. Both Sophies, now dressed the same, stand over him. Without any words or questions, one Sophie smiles at Ethan, and he assumes everything is fine. Ethan and Sophie 1 leave the house together, driving away, leaving the other two behind. As they head back to the counselor's office to confront him, they find the place empty, save for a lone piano. They sit together, now seemingly in love again, but Ethan senses something is off. Sophie suggests cooking breakfast, and when she mentions eggs and bacon, Ethan finally realizes the full extent of what's happened. He puts on his glasses and calmly responds, "I'll be right there." The realization hits him like a brick. Everything that's happened, the twists, the deception, was it all planned from the start? The couple may have escaped, but the true nature of the place they left behind remains a haunting mystery. And to not miss these great mystery stories, I recommend you click on my recaps on the right next. Subscribe and drop a like to return to the lounge for future uploads. Grab your popcorn, enjoy yourself, and see you soon, my friend.